DOJ wants advisors that focus on cartels involved in pursuing Mr. Diaz. This is Matt Graver. He'll be leading the team.
Isn't this Phoenix homicide now?
No, we're expanding the scope of the investigation a bit.
You'll act as a liaison.
What does that mean?
They need an agent with tactical experience like you.
State Department is pulling an agent from the field that specializes in responding to escalated cartel activity. You'll be part of the team. You meet up with him at Luke tomorrow?
Day after, early.
Air Force Base.
Yeah, we're gonna go see Guillermo.
Diaz's brother.
That's the one.
Where is he?
Oh, he's in the El Paso area.
What's our objective?
To dramatically overreact.
Kate, you must volunteer for an interagency task force. Think very hard before you respond. You want to be a part of this?
Do we get an opportunity of the men responsible for today?
The men who are really responsible for today, yeah.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right.
All right.
Or right.
I'm Reese. To my left is...
David.
Also known as...
David?
Question mark?
Just move on.
Further to my left...
Irina.
Across from me...
Alejandro.
Also known as...
Noah.
And wearing sandals to a very important CIA meeting, we have...
AJ.
I knew you were casual. What was that? Work casual? There you go.
Work casual. He's
Filthy casual.
He's been with them for a while, so he can get away with that. And today, we are talking about Sicario, a movie that came out in 2015. Oh, wait, AJ, what'd you watch?
Wait,
You're just gonna throw that in?
you guys watched Sicario. I said Serpico.
So far,
You guys need to get with the program here.
You're 0 for 5 on your own mini-series.
Did he say Pacifico, like the beer?
No, Serpico, I think he said.
What is that?
I don't know.
Serpico, Al Pacino, corrupt
yeah, okay.
cops in New York.
I don't know why, but that is, I've never heard of that. But I should, that's on me. That's my bad. This movie was directed by Denis Villeneuve. I'm hoping I'm saying that correct. I'll soon discover that it's different again.
After Blade Runner 2.
Yes, I said it all throughout Blade Runner 2049. I apologize. Denis Villeneuve has directed the films Incendies, Prisoners, Enemy, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and Dune. The movie stars Emily Blunt, Josh Brolin, Benicio del Toro, Daniel Kaluuya, Victor Garber, John Bernthal, and Jeffrey Donovan.
I could go for some Kaluuya right now.
Some Kaluuya? Yeah. No,
In my coffee?
I wish I could come back on that joke, but I'm not a good improver. But I like
I'm trying. I'm throwing it at
I like
you.
it. I like it. You shouldn't be throwing it at me. Throw it at someone else. The movie is written by Taylor Sheridan. And for those who are new to this show, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, had y'all seen Sicario before your preparations for this episode? AJ.
Yes, I had. I can't remember. Actually, it might have been on the recommendation of Reese, as well as some other people. So I had long wanted to see this movie based on some recommendations of people's opinions I consider highly. So, yeah, but I had seen it.
Cool. Noah.
No.
That
Oh,
was
really?
a very pregnant pause.
Very pregnant.
But you'd heard of it. You knew,
I had heard of it,
knew
yeah.
of this movie.
Yeah, I knew of it.
Irina.
Yeah, I think I saw it once. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but it was probably you, Reese, coming over and saying, "Hey, have you seen Sicario?" No. And then you put it on.
And then walked away.
And,
Yeah,
and then
even your
I've ended up seeing this movie twice. And I think the other time another friend came over to show it to other people, and I sat down to see it again.
Nice. David.
I feel like it was about 2.5, 3 years ago, something like that. And actually, it was because I have a friend who's very introverted. We didn't hang out all that often. He's not a movie person at all, almost the exact opposite. And he said this is one of his favorite movies. And if he's recommending a movie to me, I'm going to watch it. Like, it's not very often that he does. So we sat down and watched it, and it blew me away. Who knows how? Maybe it was because someone strapped a bomb to my chest. I don't know.
Nice save. Nice save from revealing your hand.
I mean, I bet you don't know what I gave this to you.
I think
You have no idea.
I have an inkling.
All right.
I have an inkling.
Base 7.
No.
It has to be.
No, you will be booted from the show. I'm just kidding. You're entitled to whatever opinion you may have.
You're entitled to whatever opinion.
I'm reason you're entitled to your opinion.
Anyway, for my part, I've seen this movie probably 10 times. Just because I really don't like it and just really want to figure out why I don't like it. No, we'll see. We'll see. But I have seen this movie a lot. This is probably, out of all the films we've covered so far, the one I've seen the most. That said, I probably need to look at our whole lineup just to verify that for sure. But yeah, this one is on heavy rotation for me. All right. With that said, are y'all ready to get into the story?
Mm-hmm.
State Department is pulling an agent that specializes in responding to escalated cartel activity.
This is not my department.
FBI!
You want to be a part of this?
Do we get an opportunity of the men responsible for today?
The men who are really responsible for today.
Been to Juarez before?
We're going to El Paso, right? You're not American. What do you work for now?
Oh, I go where I'm sent. Every day across that border, people are killed with his blessing. To find them would be like discovering a vaccine. Nothing will make sense to your American ears. But in the end, you will understand.
Spotter vehicle, left lane.
Spotted vehicle, 9 o'clock. Get your weapon out.
In Chandler, Arizona, FBI agents Kate Macer and Reggie Wayne lead a raid on a suspected Sonora cartel safe house, where they discover dozens of decaying corpses in a booby trap which kills 2 police officers. Following the raid, Kate's boss recommends her for a Department of Justice and Department of Defense joint task force, overseen by CIA officer Matt Graver and the secretive Alejandro Gillick, to apprehend Sonora cartel Lieutenant Manuel Diaz. Assured that the task force will bring Diaz to justice, Kate joins the operation.
All right. So, this movie opens with a massive bang, both, literally and figuratively, I guess. It starts on a almost first-person view of this SWAT vehicle barreling towards this house, and this guy's sitting on his chair. There's no furniture, and just watching the TV. Busts through the door, and we soon learn that this is the site of a mass grave, and all the operatives are brought in investigating this thing. Turn up something like, what was it, 60 bodies or something like that. And then
It was like 40 something, 42, I think.
I don't know. They're just SWAT.
Oh, like
SWAT
DEA team or something.
If it's DEA again,
Oh, it might
DEA in
be.
every movie. I don't know.
No, they're
I don't
FBI.
know.
Yeah, they're FBI.
They're
Sure.
FBI. I knew that.
female body inspector.
Get out of town.
But yeah, then the whole place blows up, and there's this traumatic scene of this guy kind of crawling through the dust. He's got a pretty gnarly looking wound on his head, and there's a dismembered hand. That is just it's one of the best openings to a film of this kind, and it really kind of sets the stage for what we're to expect throughout this movie, which are these just tense sequences where anything can happen. This movie is a constant like boiling pot, threatening to go over the brim at any second, and
I'd say it did go over the brim.
Well,
how did you feel seeing the bodies in the walls?
It hooks your sympathy for, like, you put yourself in the shoes of the characters on the screen because it's so visceral, their reaction. Like, you can almost smell the bodies yourself, and like, everything is, like,
you can feel
sensory.
the heat. Yeah.
Yes. And they really brought in the A-team for this movie, like, both behind the scenes and in front. You've got Roger Deakins, like, maybe the best living cinematographer today. You got Denis Villeneuve, one of the best directors working today. And this score by Johan Johansson is also on full display here. And then you got the talent in front of the screen. At this point, it's just Emily Blunt, but
and Kaluuya
and Daniel Kaluuya. What were you going to
I was going to ask: at this point, do we have Johansson's score in full?
Well, it's a good point.
I think it's the drums.
Almost as important where we don't have the score or the it's minimal.
I think at this opening scene, it has the drums. Like there's none of the actual like blaring sense of dread. But it does have that propulsive drum beat that kind of just seems to be steady throughout the entire film.
Yeah. There's that deliberate silence or lack of musical score behind it. It just adds to that tension.
Yeah, but perfectly executed opening sequence in my opinion. How do y'all feel about it?
Yeah, it's incredibly engaging, and I think one of the elements that I've always picked up, having watched some of his other films, he's so good at setting a tone, and that is in combination with the cinematography and, all the other elements, but you really do feel like you've been pulled into this world or this vignette of your world. It's
almost documentary feeling in a way. Because
in
it
some ways,
feels real.
Yeah. And he's done things like Blade Runner 2049, which is obviously fantastical, but still raw and visceral. It's really cool to see the way he handles a real life scenario. And I say real life scenario because, this is pretty raw, and I think it's refreshing to see something like that.
Oh yeah.
Like as a example, we just got off of watching Colombiana, which compared to this, they're both connected with, I'm guessing it was still drug cartels and drug trades in Colombiana.
Yeah, it was.
But there's such a stark difference between what is fantastical and what feels real,
Oh my gosh, it's such a stark difference between the two. I can't even... but also, this sets... What I do like about this opening scene is it establishes Emily Blunt or Kate, I should say, as this character who is constantly, like... in a fish out of water almost situation, even at her own job before she moves over to the task force. Like this is her first experience or at least I think it's something to this serious of a
magnitude
degree
is so high.
Like I bet she's never uncovered a body pit of 60 people and then an explosion go off.
I hope nobody ever
Yet at the same time, she's seasoned and like she knows what she's doing. She has a strong moral compass, but we also see her humanity, her like internal conflicts. That's what this movie does very well, is establishing like true, fleshed out, complex characters, and not just the protagonist, but the supporting characters
and
as well.
That's the balancing act that I do think they pull off, because she never seems like an incompetent player. She just sometimes seems like she's in a situation that is over her head, and she has to learn how to cope with it.
Right.
Even from the very beginning, and her being also the audience surrogate in a sense.
Yeah.
You're in those shoes with her.
The thing they did so well with this is that it's not that she wouldn't be able to handle it if they literally didn't provide her with the means to handle it.
Right.
They and that was kind of the point of her character, is that they weren't telling her anything. They weren't communicating what she was doing there, why she was there, what she was supposed to do. They didn't have any protocol. Really.
And they make you feel that because you feel like you're kind of going through her perspective. You feel just as lost as she is in this.
Mm-hmm. And to be able to get you to feel how she's feeling is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So they did a very good job with that.
But yeah, she is so instrumental in the tension to this movie working, though. Like the way they wrote that character is specifically engineered to get you to be on pins and needles anytime she's in a dangerous situation. She does a great job, and I think the writing for her is excellent. And what a great American accent, in my opinion.
Holy cow.
I think she totally pulls it off. I don't think she ever wavered.
No, nor Daniel Kaluuya.
True. Yeah, they're both British.
Yeah, which when we were watching this, I think Irene and I were watching it, and I brought up, I was like, I think Daniel Kaluuya is British. I can't remember, because in Get Out, he's obviously not British. But I swear I looked it up, and we both had to look it up because we were not confident. He has one of the strongest American accents that I've seen from a British person.
Yep.
I think speaking to Emily Blunt as an actress, too, she's so good about it coming across to me as a real person. You know, there are so many times you'll have a lead actress or a lead actor, and they're playing an everyman or woman, but you just don't see it. You know, kind of like Brad Pitt in World War Z is sort of like, there's sure, but I don't believe it. But she always, to me, comes across as relatable and like someone I would actually see or know.
Well, the thing is, she is always saying what you're thinking.
Right.
Like when, especially and we'll get to it, but the scene where they're trying to make their way back into the U.S. from Juarez.
Right.
When just crap hits the fan, like everything she's saying out loud, I'm thinking,
that's
like,
exactly what I'm thinking.
We need to get to that part.
And we will.
We're barely touching the tip of the iceberg.
But first we should quickly touch on the meeting she's brought into. She's recruited by Matt Graver, played by Josh Brolin, and we have not yet met Benicio del Toro's character, but let's quickly touch on Josh Brolin here, and we can get more into him as more is revealed about his character. But he almost didn't take this role. He was fresh off filming for the Everest movie.
Oh,
and
that's right.
Roger Deakins, the cinematographer, reached out to him and said, "You must take this part. Like, you have to do it." That to me, it struck me as weird, because it's rare, at least to my knowledge, that a cinematographer reaches out to an actor to get them to
Well,
sign on.
I think he felt the same way, because Brolin was like, well, if he's reaching out about this, which he never does, I guess I should take it.
Yeah.
And boy, was it a good pick.
Yeah, he's so good as this kind of just casual, laid back, but also
Very
kind
cavalier.
of, but also cold.
I'm gonna
in
say
a way.
douchey.
Well, he's not quite. He's not even quite douchey.
No, he's just cold. Like he's
There's
almost
a smugness about him.
Well,
now.
when David and I were talking about this movie while we were watching it, it was I think you brought up something about that before, like the way he acts is very cavalier sometimes, and I think I made the point of saying, like, well, he, in the line of work he does, he probably has to deal with that stuff all the time. So he needs to be very deliberate and very, just cut through the bullshit. We need to move on,
and that's something, again,
mentality.
This movie does so well. It has these two characters, Graver and Gillick, who just seem, they're so good at playing seasoned.
Yeah.
This isn't their first rodeo, and they wear it on their faces. Graver is a more energetic presence than Gillick, but still you see the tiredness, of just
like they've seen.
But also they're just like, yep, this is another day on the job.
I mean, that's another thing. These people aren't caricatures.
Right.
Like it's a kind of an odd personality, but you can definitely get the sense that someone that has to be successful in this position is a very specific type of person.
Yeah.
And they nailed that. I mean, just like you said, his cavalier attitude, the sandals, the way he sits in a car, just putting his knees up and
kicking off his shoes when he gets on the jet.
In the situation, but also has that wit about him, and like that you get this sense of danger, like that just kind of raises the hair on the back of your neck about him. And this movie is another one that does things so well where you rewatch this movie and you can take a new perspective. I encourage everybody to watch this movie. The first time you see it, you're obviously from the point of view of Kate. But if you rewatch this movie and then take it from the point of view of Matt, take it from the point of view of Alejandro, each time is a new experience, but it is actually a fully 100% complete movie from each character's point of view. And you catch things that, and it's not as maybe masterfully done as like a Fincher movie with like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but there's so much foreshadowing and interwoven things that are subtle, but so organic that like, wow, they're part of the story that you completely miss from the other person's point of view. Like this first meeting, Reggie and Kate are sitting next to each other, waiting to be called in. Matt says, what's his background, referring to Reggie, and he's like, a lawyer. No lawyers on this. Immediately cut to the next scene. Reggie is, did we do this by the book? So we're establishing that tone, and Matt doesn't want a lawyer because he knows this is what they're doing is going to be a gray area.
Right.
So like everything is so calculated, but he has that exterior that's just the coolness about it, and it's like it feels real. And even when we meet Alejandro, everything is so foreign, but real at the same time.
There's so many things I want to reference because when we're talking about these things, there are scenes later that really emphasize these points, and it's like that's the worst part about this.
Yeah, Kate accepts the operation and jumps on a plane with him. So we can continue with the story here. So we can talk about all of that.
The team, which includes Delta Force operators, U.S. Marshals, and CIA personnel, travels to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, in order to extradite Diaz's brother and henchman Guillermo Diaz. While returning to the U.S., the team engage in a shootout with cartel gunmen at the public border checkpoint, killing the gunman and shocking Kate. Alejandro tortures Guillermo on American soil and learns the cartel uses a tunnel near Nogales, Sonora to smuggle drugs into the United States. Kate begins to question the task force's illegal methods and forces Matt to reveal that their objective is not to apprehend Diaz, but to disrupt his drug operations to such a degree that Diaz will have to be summoned back to Mexico by his boss, the elusive Sonora cartel drug lord, Fausto Alarcón. By following Diaz, they plan to bring Alarcón to justice. Upon learning the task force's goal, an unnerved Kate asks Reggie to join her for support.
All right. So this is probably, and I love this whole movie, but this is probably the most exhilarating, enjoyable part of the movie for me. The whole kind of just the staging of Ciudad Juarez as this. It is, I think, if you actually you have your main characters in this movie, I think Juarez is like the main character, though. The
city itself.
Yeah, the city itself. And all of these looming overhead shots of this city with the score kind of like playing in the background.
It's like strewn about the bridges.
Yes, it's this. The score by Johansson it evokes Jaws, and they talked about that as they wanted you to associate this city with like the dread of facing the shark in Jaws, and that comes through with the strings. And just as this convoy of cars is heading there, and they're just describing what to expect. Like the time that they're going to attack you don't need to be concerned until we're getting out. That's if they're going to strike, that's when they're going to strike. And you're like, who's going to strike? Like,
why?
You're
They're always being circled.
Yeah. But this whole just descent into this hellish landscape almost, at least as depicted in this movie. I know Juarez has its good sides.
Wait, but you guys know all the good side, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I, along with my family, have been to Juarez at a not great time for the city.
I don't know how that happened.
We didn't see it at its best. We'll just say that.
Yeah, it was just family vacation. Let's go to Juarez. Definitely saw at least one thing that really unnerved us. But yeah,
didn't you see someone without a leg, Irina?
It's something.
Not without a leg, but
no. Yeah, okay. I guess I'll tell the story real quick.
Yeah, you're not. I've already provoked it. You can't put that back in the bag.
So I want to say I was maybe 13 years old. The details are fuzzy on the actual year that this happened, but I know that I was young enough to not know that I was in a one of the most dangerous cities in the world. And I actually looked back on the year, and at the time, Juarez was one of the top 3 most dangerous cities in the world.
You need to fire that travel agent.
The travel agent was my dad. But yeah, our dad just walked us over the bridge into Juarez, and I definitely saw a lady with a gaping wound on her leg. We walked a few blocks. A lot of people were looking at us. We probably looked way out of place.
You guys had some lunch. Some good Mexican food.
Actually, it was dinner. We were there at night.
Yeah, it was dark.
People with syringes and stuff, right?
No, yeah, there was
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. There was evidence of drug use, and we stopped at some restaurant, had some Coke that was in reused Coke bottles.
Restate that sentence, please.
Had some Coca-Cola that was in reused Coke bottles, and a surprisingly bland bean burrito.
Yep.
And if I recall, it was cold too.
Wonderful.
But fortunately, we made it out of there alive. We can speak to being
Dude,
in
the thing
Juarez.
is, the mood that this movie evokes from being in this place does kind of remind me of how I felt walking down the street, but at the time I didn't know exactly what I was feeling. You know, when you're so young, you're picking up on a vibe, but you don't really know where to place it.
Oh yeah. No, I felt and this might have been the first instance of me as every vacation, there's one thing that kind of makes me nervous, and we're from a family that we try to go on yearly vacations, and we've been successful thus far. But there's always one thing in the vacation that kind of pushes the boundaries for me a little bit, and I being the worrywart that I am like, let's not do this. But out of all of them, I would say the only one that was truly we could have been in some sort of danger was the Juarez trip. So that was the one instance where, maybe we could have listened to Reese on that one.
What about the mountain Jeep excursion?
Makes for a good story, though.
Yeah, it does.
You ever think about those moments where something happens and you're like, I could have died there.
Yes, every day.
And then it makes you think okay, imagine there are parallel universes, right? Mm-hmm. And in that one, I did die, and this is the one that continues on.
Yes, and here I am talking about Sicario.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of being in Sicario.
I know.
So we don't have an Alejandro in the seat next to us to assure us. How did you feel about Alejandro's character?
Yes. Hey, very graceful pivot, AJ. Alejandro, our first meeting with Alejandro is on the plane. He's kind of this mysterious figure who does not talk a lot, which in an alternate version of this script, he actually had a lot of lines. But Benicio del Toro was like, I feel like this character is more interesting if we cut out all of that. And I
think that's a good call.
Yeah, Villeneuve agreed. This character is one that should have mystique to him, and you just want to see what's kind of percolating under there.
I just like to imagine that he didn't want to learn his lines, and he's just like, you know what? I think it'd be better if I just didn't have any.
So Villeneuve agreed, and ultimately, I think they said roughly 90% of his lines were cut, which I cannot even imagine this character as a chatterbox.
Yeah.
Apparently there were a couple scenes where he explains his whole background to Kate, and
Multiple times.
I'm so glad that didn't happen, because that would really take away from the wallop of the ending of this movie.
Yeah.
You a ruptured soul that he's broken.
Yeah. And that totally comes through in the performance. And one of the reasons why I do find this movie to be rewatchable is because it is different the second time, knowing what this guy is fighting throughout the whole movie, instead of it being revealed in just the end. And you see more of the layers to that performance on rewatch. So I think he is his performance is the best one in this movie, in my opinion. Out of the three, which I think they're all good, his is my favorite.
Yeah,
I agree.
Ah, gosh, there's just the cool part to me when you first meet him is he actually falls asleep on the plane, and then they never really explain it, but you know exactly what it was, and he has a bad dream and just jumps awake,
jolted awake,
and her reaction too, where she's just like, "Oh!"
Yeah.
Or she says,
Yeah.
it's so good.
And but it's just cool because at that point you're like, okay, this guy's seen some stuff.
Yeah.
Well, both,
But anyway-
both he and Matt have this callousness about him, but they approach it or present it in different ways.
Yeah.
Because we know they both see some ghastly stuff. And then as we see Kate seeing it, we see her trembling and pick up smoking again. And like everything about it, the tension from all directions is hitting us.
Yes.
Not in an overwhelming way, but in enough where we notice this and we're like completely sucked in. And especially with Benicio del Toro's like magnetism on screen is just keeps you going.
Well, what's great about the direction here, especially in this sequence where they got to get in and out of Juarez, Villeneuve sets up all of these little, pressure points that you're kind of worried about in the back of your mind, where you see the police escorting the convoy through Juarez, and Gillick says something offhanded, "Oh, don't even trust the police. They're in on this." And if they're going to strike, it's going to be on the way back. And there's all this like, okay, well, this is just a powder keg, and I have no idea what or where or when. I mean, kind of know where, but it's just, something's about to happen.
How? Like, how is it going to happen?
And when it
Subtle
does,
cues,
Yeah.
when it does, it's
Everywhere.
like, oh my gosh, just all hell breaks loose for 1 second. Like, it's so cool seeing the professionalism of these characters where they're like 2 cars back, red Honda or something, and you see it filled with 4 thug-looking people, and then another one spots another one. They're like, pull your gun out. The escalation of that situation is so well done.
because the cues from his body language, like he's relaxed. Everyone else is still spotting things and everything, being aware and vigilant. But Gillick is relaxed. And then as soon as you see his body language shift into action, stuff is going down.
Yeah, when this guy who is like just resting on the plane, barely speaks above a mumble, is starting to move, you better be worried.
Yeah. I think this is one of my favorite
Sequences?
fish out of water scenes for Kate's character, for instance, is mostly just because of her reaction to the whole situation. She's abandoned in the car, basically, and she needs to decide to shoot someone, and she does, because that's a threat. But her whole reaction in the scenario of being like, I don't even know if what I'm doing is right.
Yeah. And it's even
Yeah.
more of a morality play, because the person she shoots is like an officer of some sort. Like he's wearing officer garb.
Which we should say he pulled his gun on her first, which
Yeah.
forces her hand.
But that's essentially the situation she's going through in this whole film, is just, I'm here, as like kind of slowly realizing that she's here for a reason, but she's not being told why.
Yeah.
And then not even knowing if she's playing for the good or the bad side,
And that's kind of what this movie's about, right? Where it's she's starting to, this is her first traversal into like the underbelly of crime, really. And what's more interesting is how, quote unquote, the good guys have to stoop to that level to combat it. Where
Fight
it's like,
fire with fire.
yeah, exactly. And just the change of her character throughout this to kind of more understand that, but still not agree with it, is fascinating.
The ends justify the means.
Right.
She wants results. She wants a better world, but how does it get done?
Yeah.
And we see Matt, I think repeatedly in the movie, the question of ROE, rules of engagement, he always just brushes it aside. We'll figure it out later, until like they make a decision. So there's that morally gray area that they're constantly in, and she is obviously on one side, they're on the other. So I mean, this movie has a lot to say about how things work, yet we're put into something that probably most of us don't really know about this kind of life. But it just draws us in, and I was amazed.
Yes. This movie also kind of occasionally cuts back to this officer who works in Mexico. It's always in the morning. He's always with his kid. His kid wants to play ball with him, and he agrees. But you get the sense that, oh yeah, this is just an officer who, maybe not really happy with his job, going to take care of his family, going to work to take care of his family.
Seems like a decent-ish guy.
Yeah, but you don't really know his piece in the movie just yet.
But we know something's going to happen.
Yeah, we know.
Because we've been shown the tension of it, and it's like, I know that I wouldn't be seeing this if it wasn't for a reason, in some other movies, if they cut away to this second act or B-roll or whatever you want to call it.
Subplot,
thank you. That's the correct term. Like, it'd be
And
like, this is extraneous. Why do we need this? Here it's like a hard shift, but it completely is done correctly.
Think about it this way too, where I think it serves sort of a dual purpose where you need a perspective from the other side, and you don't really know what part they play on that other side. But if this movie didn't have those scenes, it would strictly feel like a us versus them, United States versus Mexico that would be inappropriate.
Yeah, you don't want to demonize this everyone in this city.
Yeah, I think there's an element of this movie that tries to give
Not
the
be
viewer
didactic.
there's
but shows
this
the human
idea
experience of how this affects everything.
Exactly. Like it is not that people want to be involved in the drug trade. It's that they're almost kind of wrestled into it,
It's one of the more black and white movies I've seen. No, sorry, the opposite. It is one of the least black and white movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Very gray as far as who you're rooting for. Yeah. I mean, you're just like Kate, you don't know which side you're on.
Yeah.
It vilifies both sides.
I feel like it's interesting because there are two characters in this where you can relate in very similar ways, like and I don't know if I should bring this up because it's not revealed yet in as far as the plot goes, but basically this subplot scenario where he's I guess essentially a family man, but he's involved in means that are not wholesome necessarily, and he's been sort of like, you can argue that he's out of necessity in this situation.
Oh yeah, that's what makes it tragic,
and that's why
ultimately.
it's sad.
Yeah,
but also Kate is kind of wrestled into a situation that she didn't really want to be in the first place.
Yeah, so
and
they
she's
mirror.
She's forced to make moral decisions that in her mind are breaking with what she knows is right.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about the mirroring of those two characters.
So it's just it's a very intriguing thought.
Yeah. So at this point, before we move on to the story, Reggie is kind of brought back into the fold. That's Daniel Kaluuya's character, and their mission is somewhat revealed. That they are trying to find this tunnel, and they're trying to find this guy named Diaz who can lead them to the big bad, the kind of cartel leader. But it's still a little bit fuzzy as to what her role is in this. Kate's role. Any thoughts on this kind of plot progression here, or plot revelation?
Reggie is very well used for the expository to help kind of, in a controlled way, elucidate the manner of how we find out things.
Right.
So it's done in a way that we're still maintaining the tension of everything because we're fed bits and pieces at a time, but it also is satisfying enough because he's kind of demanding answers to make things move forward. And so it helps ease the tension as well, which is necessary because if everything's just tense all the time, it's not an enjoyable experience.
Yes.
But it's a very well done balancing act here, and he does a very good job of being the ballast for, I think, the whole movie, because he's like, we can leave this situation anytime we want, but he's completely supportive in, his respect for the situation. He wants to do the right thing and also support Kate as well.
Well,
so he's definitely not a throwaway secondary character.
Right.
Another thing that's interesting about him too is that he's the one that kind of forces Kate's true motivations into the light, where it's like he's giving her kind of this out, but something in the back of Kate's mind is like, I need to see what this is.
Yeah.
And it's like her curiosity is kind of getting the better of her, but it's also just
provides the platform for her growth as well, or her development.
Yeah, she wants to get down further into the layers of what is happening. But yeah,
I really.
We
like
also see her personal side there. She's her personal life that she's struggling with, other things too, and so that's good too. Where we see her, I guess not flaws, but her weaknesses in a more humble, human way.
What were you gonna say, David?
I was gonna say Kaluuya's character has a way of making me feel more. I don't want to say safe. I I want to say like there's something about
that's a good word for it.
I guess it's just whenever he's on the screen, it's when he is paired with Kate, right?
Yeah.
And them together, like when one person is sectioned off, you feel isolated, and when they're together, they feel empowered.
It's like a
'cause
return to normalcy.
He's the only character that she has history with. All these other people are new to her. It's a new world, and when you bring it back to like that kind of safety net of having this other guy that she's been through some stuff with and she can trust, it you do feel a little bit safer.
Yeah, and
Yet
whenever
at the same time,
he helps it.
Yeah, at the same time, it doesn't take away the agency and the power of Kate as a woman, you know. So it's not like a man coming in and saving the day for the woman who's incapable. We still see her strength, and it builds upon that because her strength of character, and he just kind of fills in the gaps where she needs support.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because they obviously have a really good friendship. I think they do a very good job of establishing that. And I think it's kind of funny, too, where like they're hanging out and she's undressing and getting dressed, and he's kind of off on the side. Obviously, it's no sexualization at all. And he's just like, you need to get a new bra. like come
something
on,
lacy.
Man. Yeah. just being friends. She's like, oh, shut up.
Yeah, they're just...
He's like, you smell bad.
And it's nice to see a guy and a girl just be friends.
Yeah.
So often...
Without some of that weird romantic tension that is kind of forced in there.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Don't you love friends that set you up with cartel members that try to kill you?
He wasn't a cartel member. He was bought off by the cartel. We'll get there.
Yeah. With that said, we can transit.
You were right, though.
I know.
Yeah. Let's move on in the story here.
To disrupt Diaz's cash flow, the team raids a bank used by his money launderers. Kate and Reggie want to use their findings from the raid to mount a legal case against Diaz, but are ordered to stand down to avoid jeopardizing the operation. While commiserating at a bar, Reggie introduces Kate to Ted, a friend and local police officer. Kate and Ted go to her apartment, but as they become intimate, Kate realizes Ted is working with the cartel. In the insulting struggle, Ted begins strangling Kate, but Alejandro suddenly appears and subdues him. Alejandro and Matt reveal that they used her as bait, knowing the cartel would target her after she foolishly allowed herself to be seen at the bank raid. Alejandro and Matt coerce Ted into revealing the names of other officers working for Diaz.
So this is the only time in the movie where I saw a little bit of writing gymnastics to get something to happen that needed to happen. I watched this movie like 3 times this week, and I've like ultimately come to terms with it. But if there was one weak point in this movie, I thought it was the whole Ted tangent, having this guy being paid off by them. But as I watched it more, I was like, no, it does make sense.
It definitely makes sense.
No, it does. It just seemed like the one part of this movie that went like...
It's a little forced.
A little over the top, a little...
and I think it's a time constraint to not fully flesh out the corruption of, the system on the other side of the border.
Yeah, and that's why
I was gonna say, to me, I wasn't bothered by it at all because this guy just kind of, appeared, was like, hey, let's hook up, pretty much. And it was just after that event. He's in the police. It's in Phoenix again, right next to where they're having a lot of trouble with the cartel already.
Tucson, I believe.
It makes sense that he would be corrupted.
Yeah, and that's why I said I have come to terms with it, and I actually think it's important that it is shown that the corruption is from both sides. That it's not just something over there.
That's the gray area. This whole movie's gray.
I love though that description of the they get intimate and then he strangles her pretty much right after.
Yeah.
Well, she wait a minute.
Literally was about to shoot him.
Oh, I
love how quick she was kind of acting. Although I will say, she could have handled that way better.
That's what I was thinking.
Well, I think she was
terror.
confident she could get to it.
Yeah,
and she did get to it. It's just
no. It's like
switch emotions like that 180 degrees.
Yeah.
I mean, especially being in kind of a back foot, so to speak, with her whole thing in this operation. She's already unsure about stuff. I'm sure she's and drunk.
That's true.
There's a lot going on, and I think it was a smart way to set that wristband up as the trigger, and plant that earlier on.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of the cinematography here uses reflections a lot. Her reflection in mirrors and all of that stuff, which kind of shows the duality of the table. So, I mean, the cinematography here is beautiful, and you can read symbolism into that and all sorts of stuff like the red, white, and blue suit for Alejandro and taking off the pieces at different points. I don't know. That's too much of a tangent. But
it's the tangent we need.
All those things are in there when you look for them, and that's the best time to find them, because you want to see that kind of thing, but it all fleshes things out to a complexity, adds that granularity, the texture of a movie, so to speak, that you don't really think about, but adds to your experience on a subconscious level.
The movie's just beautiful. So I also love seeing the how the darker sides of Graver and Gillick are slowly revealed here, is particularly with the interrogation scene of Ted in the back of the police car. How you've got Gillick as kind of the muscle who's just doing the dirty work, and Graver who's the vocal interrogator, I guess, if I can say it that way. This is just the movie's kind of easing you in to what these two are actually capable of, until we get to the final moments in this movie where you're like, yeah, I could see these characters doing that. It's just like, yep, this kind of this downward spiral almost.
That torture scene, or it wasn't torture yet. It began with the.
It was about to be torture,
and then there was
really?
I don't know. Okay, so I know it sounds weird explained, but whenever he's like, pushing himself on the
posturing himself,
like that was like something I had never seen in a movie, but it was like, I get exactly what he's doing
animalistic
here.
Physical
feeling.
dominance.
Yes, but it was a really cool.
Yeah,
Well,
guess
it's
calling
a
it
strong,
cool, but
it's a strong like complexity. Well, not complexity, but it kind of plays with our expectations, because we see that and then we contrast that with him as a savior figure for Kate, as someone who's kind of safe, that we want to trust, but we don't. And then he says, you remind me of someone I care about, all this stuff. So it's like, who is this guy? He can play this side and he can play this side. I don't know what to feel.
Yeah. Well, it also like breaks those, I guess, like intimacy boundaries, where it's like almost an intimate interrogation. Like this guy is like inside your comfort bubble. And that's disarming, I would imagine.
But we also get that hint that it's personal.
Yeah. But yeah, he does that a couple times in this movie, and both times it's like, okay, stuff's about to happen.
exactly, like, well, that guy is going to reveal everything.
Yep, exactly, and you believe it. I actually really want to call back to the shot again during the first interrogation, where any cliche movie that focuses on the drain would show the stream of water and blood going towards the drain. Oh, yeah. But it just shows the drain, and it's like, then cuts away, and it's like, yeah, I know what's going to be going down that drain in a second. Yep. You didn't need to show it.
Yeah, as he's getting water and he talks to, his old contact and just picks up the jug, and everything is implicit.
Yeah.
Mr. Burn Notice.
That's right. That I remember that show.
Irina called that out. That's the guy.
Yeah.
So before we move on, the movie quickly, this is when it cuts back to the officer yet again with his boy. His boys brought him breakfast. And the boy like touches his gun for a second, and he immediately snaps at him and says, "Don't ever touch that. Never touch that." As in to say, never touch a gun in your life. So this father is obviously, you learn more that this father is not happy with the way his life has gone. There's some
almost
shame
like,
there.
I do this so you don't have to, kind of a thing. Yeah.
And then set it up earlier too, that he would like go play soccer with his son.
Jugar football?
Yeah.
And he was just kind of just a nice father figure.
And this is another example of this movie being very restrained and deliberate in how it doles out its information about characters. Because now I'm like, okay, I'm getting more of an impression that this officer does something that might be a bit shady, something that he regrets, but he still loves and wants to protect and provide for his family. And then you're starting to be like, yes, these lines are going to convene in the end, and I am not getting a feeling that it's going to be something good.
Not to
Lingering
mention the way he interacts with his wife is very distanced, and he doesn't really look her in the eyes. Like she's looking at him, and he doesn't look up. His head is always down.
Yeah, it's
But she's also in a protecting position because she presents him as a good figure to their son, but then we see her, alone in the room, like very contemplative.
Right.
Like
right.
this affects and impacts things on like all levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. AJ, you want to continue with the story?
The team soon learns that Diaz is being recalled to Mexico, as they had hoped, and prepare to raid the tunnel. Matt further reveals that Kate and Reggie's involvement is simply a technical necessity, as working with U.S. federal law enforcement grants the CIA legal auspice to work on American soil. Angered, Reggie advises Kate that they leave, but she insists on joining the raid to learn more about the operation's true nature. At the Mexican end of the tunnel, Kate witnesses Alejandro kidnapping one of Diaz's drug mules, a corrupt Mexican police officer named Silvio. Kate attempts to arrest Alejandro, but he shoots her in her bulletproof vest to incapacitate her, and then drives off with Silvio.
It's getting real, guys.
Yeah, and before we get into the crowning jewel action set piece, action set piece of the movie, I'm so glad that the movie decides to reveal why Kate is here at this point, because I'm like, the whole movie I'm wondering, like, okay, why did they drag Kate into this? Like, all she seems to do is just oppose them at every turn, and why not just cut her loose? Like, what is she providing for this team? And to learn that it's something as innocuous as
a legal obligation.
Like, we need you here to sign.
Didn't want a lawyer.
Yeah, we need you here to sign a paper so that we can do this. Like, that's
like, we had somebody in a different government organization who was here, who witnessed it, and they gave us the green go.
Well, it wasn't even just that. They said that they could only act if they had someone who could be considered a civilian. Or
And Reggie says that actually a little bit earlier in the movie, that they can't operate domestically.
Yeah.
So it's kind of they throw that pepper in a little bit ahead of time.
Yep.
And all this, like, rewatching it, like Reese is doing and I am doing. Like, you rewatch this and you get something new every time you watch this movie.
Yeah. And Daniel Kaluuya not only earlier says it, but he is mouthing Kaluuya. Sorry, it's hard. But he is mouthing the words as the other guy is saying it, as Brolin is saying the lines. As he's saying it, he comes to the realization himself. It's like, this is what they used her for.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then when they go out to the trunk and Reggie's like, we can leave, like, we don't have to be here, and then they're screwed. But Kate, literally, like, they have ready to go their tack gear, and it's interesting. They get their vest, and for the body armor, she says, here, front and back plates, as in, watch your back because you can't trust the people on your six.
Yeah.
As well as, the enemy combatants on your front.
Yeah, and
so
that just
that was neat.
Really helps with the tension again in this sequence. And this is another just masterclass of an action sequence. It's dusk, like the closest you can get to night, but they still manage to pull color. And the stark contrast of the silhouettes of the operatives against the dusk sunset, and then on goes the night vision. And apparently the night vision cameras are actually like real. It's actually real night vision, which that's so much cool. From a nerdy perspective, that's really cool.
I'm just gonna say this is something they should model any modern war movie off of moving forward.
Oh yeah.
I think Zero Dark 30 does the same.
Yeah, they did it excellently.
Yeah.
And FLIR is getting cheaper. Like, we see FLIR a lot in other stuff, even consumer grade stuff.
Yeah. But this scene is so cool. There's just these... I'm pretty sure a good portion of this there's no music for, especially when the guns go off. And just those bullet flares through this tunnel, and just how you're disoriented by this tunnel. It's this new area that you have no idea, no concept of how big or intricate it is, and there's bad guys that you can't see, or opposition that you can't see, and it all culminates in kind of this moment where Kate comes out the other end and sees Gillick holding up this police officer who's been moving these drugs from the back of the car onto this pallet, and she realizes that, oh, this guy is perhaps working for another cartel.
Oh, snap.
And that the operatives are cool. Graver is cool with that, as long as they can, get the ultimate end result that they're going for. This is such a expertly done sequence. What do y'all think?
It was crazy.
It's so cool the way they set it up. I mean, they show you multiple night vision settings. You have like the green dark goggles, as you imagine. They have the all white on black, and then they also have a top down like a drone view, and they cover their bases, and you feel like you're there with them. And when they get into the tunnels, I mean, I didn't know what to expect going into this. I didn't realize that we were going to see Benicio del Toro's character going off on his own. Like when they're interacting, I was like, what's happening?
And then seeing the officer in that situation too, and you're like, okay, that's where this guy comes in. Now I know what this movie's doing.
You knew it, and your heart was breaking.
Yeah,
you're like, no, you know what's gonna happen.
And the movie really does get you to try to face those tough questions of like, you want to like this Gillick guy, but he is truly doing some depraved stuff.
He's like, crossing the moral boundary.
The thing is, he's completely numb to everything because I can imagine the people he loved the most in his life are no longer a part of his life for a certain reason. But you're still like, you just straight up shot this officer.
Wait, okay, we know in this segment why. So can we explain what happened with his character?
I don't think you quite know yet.
We learn when she talks with Brolin's character right afterward.
Yeah, then we're not there yet.
But that's not in this section?
Nope, that's the next one.
Dang it.
Yeah, it's weirdly cut. The paragraph's weirdly cut, but this ends with...
we might as well talk about it since it's there.
It's the next paragraph.
We'll get into it, but I do want to talk about the standoff here. The scene, though, where Gillick gets the officer to drive the police car while he sits in back with the gun to his back.
Well, don't forget, he shot her.
Yeah, yes. He shoots Kate, who had him at gunpoint because she now realizes what's happening.
Yeah, but she has a vest on. It basically just knocks the wind out of her.
Yeah, he deliberately shoots her in the body armor.
Right.
Yeah, he's not trying to kill her. He was shooting the body armor.
Right.
And then he walks up to her and says, "Don't ever aim a gun at me again." That was like his warning. Like,
sure.
That's his power stance again.
Yeah.
Like, coming into play.
This guy literally, I think the only reason she's alive is because earlier he says that she reminds him of someone. Yeah. And you learn that that's
someone he was related to.
Yep.
Gosh, how quickly he decided that was exactly what he needed to do.
Yeah.
No. Well, everything he does is out of like, this is necessary.
It's
like,
deliberate.
This is what I need to do to get my end goal.
Yeah, and he knows exactly how much he needs to do it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
And another just amazing exercise in tension, though. This scene, it's completely dark except for the police car lights. And they're pulling over Diaz's car, and they set up Diaz. He's got a weapon, and okay, something very bad is about to happen. Yep. And sure enough, oh no, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Something's about to happen.
I think we're all kind of champing at the bit.
You want me to get us there?
Yeah, we're champing at the bit to conclude this
I'll
story.
get you there, don't worry.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, let's see. The next day... No, I'm just kidding. Kate angrily confronts Matt, who finally explains that the operation is part of an ultimate plan to eliminate all cartel competition, which will result in only a single cartel that the U.S. can easily control. Alejandro, a lawyer who worked for the Medellin cartel, was hired to assassinate Alarcón as part of his grand plan. Alejandro's motives are also personal, as Alarcón had ordered the murder of Alejandro's wife and daughter when Alejandro was a prosecutor in Juarez. In Mexico, Alejandro forces Silvio to drive him to Diaz, then kills Silvio, and forces Diaz to continue on towards Alarcón. Reaching Alarcón's estate, Alejandro, with the help of the task force's remote surveillance, kills Diaz, the guards, and Alarcón himself, along with his wife and 2 sons.
The dumber version of this movie would be the Alejandro origin story of him being a prosecutor, and then his wife and daughter being killed, and then 3 years of him becoming this cold-blooded killer.
Yeah.
A la John Wick.
Dude, that would make a great TV series.
But at the same time, you know how in Atlantis we talked about and we referenced Fury Road with Furiosa being the actual main character, told through the point of view of, Max's character. Here we have that with we have a triplicate, we have a trio of characters who all have their own origins and stories and stuff. and then we're basically told through Kate's eyes.
Yes.
So,
and I actually think for this third act, up until the very end, when it shifts back to Kate, this becomes Alejandro's story.
Yeah.
Like, more dominantly. Like, the first
see
two
the title
acts,
of the movie.
Yeah, first 2 acts are Kate, and then it shifts in a way where it's not jarring. It just, it naturally shifts to Alejandro for the final act. Yeah, as you said, the movie's namesake, the Sicario, and it becomes his story.
Well, the great thing about the way they did this is that from the beginning, they kind of just paired them together in a lot of their shots. Even though they're so far not, or like even at the beginning when they first meet, they're so far from each other as far as their occupation and what they're doing, but it felt like they had some sort of like simpatico,
rapport.
I guess, in which it was like, oh yeah, we're the outsiders, kind of.
Yeah.
But
Graver's the one who's just kind of entrenched in it more than the other two.
Yeah.
And in any other movie with a lesser director, this would be fumbled. Like, I feel like I think this is a
Paul W.S. Anderson come to play.
Well, not him. You know, he works with ensemble casts. I don't think he has a single movie that's like one main character, except maybe Rushmore or Bottle Rocket.
I said Paul W.S. Anderson.
Oh, sorry.
Wes Anderson.
Not Wes Anderson.
Yeah. I'll take that back.
I was like, you're defending Paul W.S. Anderson?
I hear Anderson and like 3 directors pop into my head.
Wait, what's the third one?
Paul Thomas Anderson, Paul W.S. Anderson, and Wes Anderson.
What was Thomas Anderson?
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Anyway.
There Will Be Blood.
Oh, whatever. Yeah. Andrew.
This movie definitely has that poignancy on top of the visceral, feel of everything. So that message that's kind of highbrow, so to speak, is still there and unmuddied, where other movies might try to take that kind of intellectual message and throw stuff in there and it just kind of falls apart because it's not actually sincere or fully delivered. This one doesn't really tell you anything specifically. It just kind of sheds light on a lot of stuff and really kind of gets you thinking as well as feeling.
Yeah. And another shout out to Johansson's score. There's like a motif that comes up that is basically representative of like the immigrant problem and just how many people on the Mexican side that are suffering because of this violence. And it really carries through the somberness of this whole thing as well and gives this movie like kind of a beating heart along with all of the almost nihilistic violence. But yeah, it's so good. Let's talk about the one-man raid on this estate where Gillick just coldly takes down these guards and then the sit down with the family in front of the 2 kids, the wife, and this. Is his name ever dropped? I wasn't able to look it up.
Diaz?
No, Diaz is the guy who he took the car of.
No, I know, but I thought it was Manuel Diaz was the...
Manuel Diaz was the guy he got...
Was it really? I don't know why I really thought that Diaz was also the name of the guy.
Talking about Alarcon?
Was it
Yeah.
I only had to say his name like 10 times in that paragraph.
Well, I don't... I whatever. Sorry.
Reese watched this movie
AJ's
3
talking,
times.
just tune him out.
I was listening. The names, though, kind of go over my head.
No, I'm just kidding.
Also, before we get into that, something that I meant to bring up, but I was being distracted at the time, was when he's talking, when Kate and Matt are confronting each other, when she punches him in the face and he pins her down.
Yeah.
He is replicating the exact same lines that the other corrupted officer is saying to her when he is pinning her down and choking her.
Really?
They're almost identical lines.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
And when I was watching it, I felt more uncomfortable with his character because of that. Like he's saying, "Shh, calm down, relax, just let it happen, And I'm like,
that is weird.
And I'm like, that makes me extremely uncomfortable.
Yep.
So I'm sorry to do on a tangent there, but
No, you're fine. No, that I hadn't noticed that. That another.
There's quite a bit of those parallel kind of little sub things. I don't know what to call them.
Anyway, the dinner scene. This is the big, like, this movie has been playing with my emotions throughout the whole thing, and I am literally turned upside down as to what Gillick is actually not evil he's capable, but what he is capable of. And I'm like, is he going to just kill the boss, or is he really going to make a statement? And he really makes a statement.
The answer is yes.
Yes, to both of those. I was so conflicted with this scene where he says, "You killed my wife and my daughter," and the other guy says it was nothing personal.
Yeah, just
and
threw acid on them.
Is that really the right thing to say in this situation?
I know.
When a guy has his gun to you, it's
and
nothing,
your family?
It was nothing personal, and then he says, "For me, it is."
He's like, dang, I know exactly what's going to happen here.
So he shoots his wife and 2 kids like super fast. It was like under a second.
Yeah.
They're both dead. And then he's like, finish your meal. It's like, that's just...
He lets him experience the pain. I honestly think it would have been more torturous to let him live. Like, shoot his arms and legs and leave him.
Yeah, but...
He got what he needed, though, because, like, it's like, I don't know, there's no monologue or this is what happened, this is what you deserve. Like, it's like how cold he is now.
Yeah, and it's the ultimate, like, violence begets violence. It's like you're causing violence and you will create it. And it'll be this vicious cycle. And that's another kind of thing that this movie plays off of a lot, is that it spreads like a disease. And violence is actually referred to as a disease from, I think it was Gillick himself. It's like once you find...
the vaccine.
Alarcon, that is like the vaccine. So I just find it concludes that loop as well. Like everything about this movie is so well thought out, and there's no, plot thread left unturned. I mean, unresolved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
What were you saying, Irina?
Oh, I wasn't saying anything. I was just finishing his sentence.
yeah, I know I've been talking a lot. I want to get y'all's feelings on this final scene, or not final scene, but this dinner scene.
It's you know how when you watch a movie that really has an effect on you, there are very particular scenes that you will always remember. You know what I mean? Like some other details will fade and you have to rewatch the movie again, but there are some scenes where you just never forget that scene. And this movie has a few of them for me, and that's definitely one of them. Like, I'll always remember the dinner table setting. Like, that, for some reason, it's just drilled into your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Props to the children actors here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh, as they nervously, start eating their food.
All their mannerisms, that every start, jump, their eyes shifting back, and, you feel it's palpable. Mm-hmm. And honestly, those people in the center of the table are the center of this story. Like we've said, all this violence affects things that are even seemingly insulated. Mm-hmm. And then you have the 2 oppositional forces, just the collateral damage, the loss that's just because of business or money or whatever.
Yeah. And that line, one of his final lines to them is like, "Time to meet God." I'm like, oh gosh.
He at least killed them quickly, which isn't exactly the treatment his family got.
True.
Did you say the exact treatment his family got?
So his daughter, he thinks she's thrown in a barrel of acid, and his wife was I
think just executed is what they said.
They cut off the head or something.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Beheaded,
Tortured.
no
big deal.
This is a heavy movie for sure.
Maybe not to Reese, but to us, maybe.
It's okay. It's heavy, but it's quick. About
and it's digestible.
Yeah. So they
not
move
overbearing.
on. Yeah. It's the weird thing is it's heavy, but it's weirdly in my mind. This will sound weird, but it's a necessary amount of heavy because this is the subject matter you're dealing with.
How do you talk about this without it being heavy?
Yeah, but they do it in a strangely graceful manner where they take that violence and then they move on. They're not shoving your nose in it,
Yeah. All right, let's finish off the story.
The next day, Alejandro appears in Kate's apartment and forces her at gunpoint to sign a statement confirming that the entire operation was illegal. He then suggests she move to someplace quiet where the rule of law still applies. calling the area a land of wolves. As he leaves, she aims her pistol at him, but cannot bring herself to pull the trigger. Back in Nogales, Silvio's widow watches her son's soccer game, which is briefly interrupted by the sound of distant gunfire.
What a chilling scene in her apartment. It also, the wolf line is very important to this whole movie because she has been really kind of trying to figure out her role in all of this. And the final scene where has the gun pointed towards him as he's walking away, that's the big, like, are you going to play with the wolves or are you not? And if she had pulled that trigger, I feel like that would be like a definitive, like, okay, I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole even further.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth on it because
I was almost certain she was going to die. I was so certain that she was not going to sign that paper and then he was going to kill her and forge her signature, like, or something.
it's so tense. Like when he puts the gun up to her.
Because you don't know. You
And
honestly do not know.
Would he have done it?
Yeah, and without that,
He would've.
No, without that dinner
you
scene where
sure?
he just kills the kids and the wife. You know, he has no regard.
He's
for
capable.
human life. If it,
he has no regard for them, but he might have regard for her.
The thing is, he's capable. We don't
he's
know.
capable,
We don't know his
definitely.
character enough to know
He's
if he
got a
would or
heart. He's a
wouldn't, but
hitman with a
capable.
heart.
I don't know if I know if a hitman with a heart.
He almost promised her, "Don't ever point a gun at me again."
Yeah.
She did, and he knew about it. And you can, like, he's got that sixth sense. Like, he knew when to turn around because he felt that gun pointed at him,
Yeah.
and he just let her go.
yeah,
Well-
but that one. Go ahead.
No, I was just, it's one of those things where it's, he's been around people like this for so long. It's almost like calling her bluff, though. He's like, I know she's not going to shoot me, kind of a thing. She just doesn't, she's not that kind of person, you know? Like, I've been around people that are not afraid to pull the trigger, and she's not one of them, you know? Like, it's that he exudes such confidence, and it's confidence and also a kind of lack of care of what happens to him. You know, it's like, I just have one motive. If I die, I die. I have nothing to like really live
And
for.
that's
kind of what I
yeah.
was thinking.
He's referred to as a ghost earlier. Remember where he's like,
Yeah.
that one guy's like, I didn't know ghosts drink water.
Yeah.
That is literally what his character is. It's a ghost of his former self. He's not one of this world anymore, but he's still
Right.
walking amongst us.
Yeah.
I kind of saw that moment slightly differently from you, but I see also that now.
Not to mention he's always wearing white suits.
The way that I saw it though was kind of as a, well, here's your shot, like you can do this now, fair game at this moment.
But that's what's so much fun about movies like this is you can argue all the motives and what people are thinking and why this happened this way or what could have been, and it's no one answer is the right answer. I love movies like that because I love talking about it.
The thing is, I don't think this movie, what's so intriguing about it is I think it deliberately doesn't take a stance on either side. It's
Yeah.
like, you figure it out.
Yeah.
Where it's like, what do we need to do to solve this problem? And the answer is gray. Like, we don't really know how, we don't have the solution yet. It's just this cyclone that you have to figure out, like, do damage control on. Like, people are gonna die, but we have to stop the cyclone.
I have a question for you, because I kind of have an answer for this in my mind. But how necessary do you think it was for Kate's character to be a woman?
I kind of have insight into this because the writer for this film, Taylor Sheridan, specifically wanted a woman in this role because he found them more likely to really try to uphold the moral, like the moral high ground.
Try to be by the book.
Yeah, instead of getting their hands dirty.
Right.
So that's I kind of gravitated towards that line of thinking because it was already implanted in my mind. But what did you have an answer?
I that's part of it too. But there's also that in my mind it adds this other element where myself being a woman, there's this increased sense of futility on her side. She's constantly surrounded by men. You know, it's almost like a men's world, and she's out of the loop all the time. But also just this, there are 2 interactions where she's physically subdued by a guy.
Yeah.
And then emotionally subdued or, you know, morally subdued by this Alejandro character. And that's like the last bit that she has. Like what she has is her morality and her sense of right and wrong. But he essentially like forced her arm too in that way. So there's just like this increased sense of futility, like I said, and it's so effective because I feel that so strongly by the end where I'm like, you know, but she's been kind of a pawn through the whole thing.
Yeah, and she does finally gain something, and she does essentially have an upper hand of sorts when she pulls the gun on him at the very end. But it's still like, he's still kind of playing with her mind in that scene.
If she shoots, that's also going against her.
She's becoming a part of the problem.
So she's been kind of, it's a checkmate almost.
It's a lose-lose.
You know?
Yeah.
Like she's been outwitted on all accounts. Like that's why it's so frustrating. But that means it's a good movie. Like I feel that. Like it feels intentional.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the story portion. Anyone have any closing thoughts before we move on?
It's not very often that I say one of the most important scenes is the final scene. And in this film, I think the final scene is just so, like, we've brought up the word chilling before, but this one in particular gives me goosebumps, and it is the soccer match going on with the family.
What a choice for an
ending.
ending.
And then just like they're in the midst of the soccer game, and then, you know, gunfire breaks out, and they all just kind of look and then slowly just kind of return to the game again. And it's just, it's so emotionally charged with like wow, this is life.
That's their life.
Yeah, it's a metaphor. It's all a metaphor.
It's like another Sicario plot is playing out in the city somewhere, and they're just playing soccer.
Yeah, well, it's like it's like we only saw an example of it. Like this is all over. There are all sorts of stories. Like it's a web.
And the fact that family. What was the officer's name? Do you know?
Diaz.
Silvio.
No, Silvio. Yeah. And just pretty much the day after, he's not there or whatever time this is, and they're like, well, whatever, I guess. I mean, that sucks, but it's sad. But then, and he just that day goes to play soccer.
It just is emphasizing that death is much more a regular thing in their lives than it is for us over here.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, AJ, earlier?
Well, yeah, just the normalcy of it. Like earlier on when, I forget his name, pulls Kate up to the rooftop. He's like, you want to see something cool?
Oh, yeah.
And then referring to everything as fireworks. And he's like, look over there. Like, and it's like a war zone. In an urban city, like you've got tracer rounds, like everything, like explosions.
Imagine that happened
literal
in
war zone.
downtown.
Yeah.
Where we are.
Yeah.
It'd be front page news.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not
all right.
to steal your thunder there, AJ.
This has been a fun story portion. Let's close the story out here, and we'll take a quick break. On the other end, we're going to give our brief reviews, talk about what critics thought, do some box office, and then talk about this movie as the start of a franchise. We'll see y'all then. Welcome back. Let's talk Sicario. David, you got our scores in a bowl there. You want to pull them at random?
I sure will. First score. Noah with a 9.0.
Hey,
right.
that's me.
Starting strong.
This movie was intense, and it's not the kind of intense that a lot of movies tend to do for show. They just kind of put in a gory scene or make this or that heavy just to be edgy.
Yeah.
But this one really makes sense in it, and they're actually telling a story, and all the characters are just, like AJ has said before, they just all have their whole background, and it could all be from their perspective, and the movie would be the same but different. And I don't know. There's just so much that you can, pick apart in this and say like, oh man, this was really good, or this was crazy. But ultimately, it just comes down to, the characters for me, and I think the characters were phenomenal, and for that, you get a 9.
All right, next up, Reese with a obvious 10.
Yeah. I gave this movie. I gave it a
10.
I gave it a 10. I was, I was kind of earlier in the week thinking, yeah, I'll give this movie a 9. I've seen it before. But as this show that we're on has tended to do for me, I am looking deeper into movies than I normally do. And with Sicario, it's one of those ones where everything that's set up is paid off. There's such a symmetry to everything, and it has something to say about, morality that I find very fascinating. And what do you do in this situation? It's kind of this. It's impossible to find a solution where the good guys win and they have no blood on their hands. And this really tackles that head on. And what really helps hit that home is that it is in a real situation. This is based off. I think this movie was inspired by events that happened in 2010, where there was just huge spurts of violence in Juarez, which there have been throughout the past, but it was a particularly bloody year or so, however long that was, and lots of women went missing, lots of cartel violence, trafficking, all that. So this one roots a moral quandary in a real life scenario, and maybe this actually being kind of in our backyard since we're all Texas, I really kind of latch on to this movie, and I just find it to be so fascinating and oddly rewatchable. And we've talked about this, how David over here, Noah, they're like, yeah, I love this movie, but I don't see it as rewatchable.
It's not.
For me, I can
Isn't. Dude, you said you could go to sleep to this, and
Reese
I don't get it.
No, this movie just it pulls me in from the very. Oh, maybe not go to sleep. That's the wrong thing to say. I am, but anytime this movie is on, I'm invested.
You're comfortable.
I'm invested in what's happening. It shows me a completely different side of the world that is only 8 hours away from me, and I find that just kind of.
You could literally get up right now and drive there.
Yeah, I know.
1 tank of gas.
Yeah, and apart from that, though, I think the script is incredibly intelligent by Taylor Sheridan. It's all of the characters are written so well and are complex, have multiple layers. I think Villeneuve is at the top of his directing abilities here. This I see as like one of the trifecta of his movies that I think are like borderline perfect. It's Sicario, Blade Runner 2049, and Arrival. And
Gosh, we should cover Arrival.
yeah, I don't think that one had franchise ambitions, but I would love to talk about it. And the talent in front of and behind the camera that I've already mentioned before. Roger Deakins, the cinematography is amazing. Johan Johansson's score accents this movie perfectly and knows when to tug at the heartstrings and when to insert the dread. Scare the crap out of you. This movie, because of that score, becomes a horror movie at certain points where it's just like you're anticipating the scare. You're anticipating, like, you're going up the roller coaster and you're just, when is this thing gonna crest and then drop? And then just the acting talent. You've got Emily Blunt, Benicio del Toro, Josh Brolin, just totally taking.
Oh yeah.
You get the sense that they're all like vying for the best role in the movie. Like they're all hungry to be like the standout but they all like work together harmoniously. It's just such a good movie, and I'm not gonna say it's perfect, even though I gave it a 10 out of 10. I just think like I'm so passionate about this movie, and I think everything it does really kind of speaks to me, and the fact that I can find it endlessly watchable, it deserves a 10.
All right. Next up. Oh, also, before we go on, I'm just going to say, you brought up Arrival. I didn't realize he directed that.
Yeah.
But when we were watching this movie, when we were listening to the score, I was trying to think of who the composer was. And I was like, I don't know what, but it reminds me of Arrival.
I think it's the same composer.
Which means the director and the composer were both, and I know we looked it up, and it was the same composer. Yep. So I felt good, because I'm not a good music guy. The fact that I was able to pull that out.
Even though you were in a band.
Yeah. Hey, look, being good at an instrument is completely different than having like a memory for every score you've ever heard.
Yeah.
Regardless.
I mean, triangle's not that complicated.
The electric triangle, AJ. All right, moving on. Irina.
When you get shocked a lot by an electric
Don't worry
triangle.
about it. Don't worry about it. I wore gloves, rubber gloves. Next up is Irina with a 10.
Yeah, so I almost gave it a 9.5 because it feels like there was something off, but upon watching it, I think they managed to encapsulate everything that the vision desired of this film. And it's so well balanced, and the pacing is perfect in my mind. Like, sitting down to watch a movie called Sicario, I was expecting, like, oh, here we go, like 3 hours of people, like, trekking through hot Mexico and, you know, a whole bunch of talk and no action, and then all of a sudden, just a bunch of cars driving around. I don't know. But, you know, like, there are some movies where you can hear a title and you just know how long it's going to be. This one, I had no idea you could get so absorbed and forget about, you know, how long it's taking to get through the movie. I think Blade Runner 2049, like, I gave that one a 10, and that one's so good. But that one you can feel how long it is.
Yeah.
And it deserves it, honestly. But this film, I think, is speaking from a perspective where I don't really go out of my way to watch movies like this. To say that this was a 10 says something. Like, I do enjoy this movie. I will probably see it again. Maybe not over and over like Reese, but I definitely will watch this movie again.
All right.
Next up is 01 for JA.
01.
Sorry, AJ with a 10.
All right.
That was hilarious.
I had it backwards.
I'll go where Reese hasn't, and I will say this is a perfect movie.
All right.
And Reese basically has taken what I want to say, so I'm going to try to expand on it a little bit. So first off, director here, I kind of picked up on a lot of the similarities the first time I saw this and rewatched it. I realized it's Denis again after Blade Runner 2049, but I picked up on some similarities there. So apparently he's got my number, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm excited for Dune.
And Irina's number.
Yeah, Arrival too. But yeah, Dune I'm excited for. But this movie is firing on all cylinders. I really, like, as hard as I try, I can't find any legitimate flaw. Like pace, we've mentioned, music, cinematography is beautiful. Acting, like Reese said, like every technical aspect of this movie, every metaphorical, figurative, everything there is present. And this engages you emotionally on multiple senses as much as a movie can, because it kind of gives you that projection of scent and just being there, like the eeriness, the tension, real, true, legitimate, organic tension, which a lot of movies I find fault with that are trying to artificially inject tension, and I hate that. This one builds it extremely well. And Irina mentioned balance, and that's a very important point here. Is everything is so balanced. This is a movie that engages you again emotionally and intellectually, but without being sophomoric or preachy. It is exploring something so real and heavy yet at the same time, it is incredibly entertaining. And I think that's where Reese is coming from. Not saying I could sleep for this movie, but I'm with him. I could rewatch this. I have rewatched this 3 times this week myself.
All right.
And you find something new every time. And it's not on the level of something as maybe technical as Adventure and the girl with the dragon tattoo, which I think is definitely up there. But that movie is not rewatchable, even though everything's like excellent in it, the filmmaking, everything. And you pick up on all these little details that are meticulously placed there.
Agreed.
This movie doesn't have that outwardly, all those details just jumping out, or not jumping out, but maybe not as deliberate or as, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's a different style, but balance is the key. Like, it is rewatchable, but it is a heavy movie.
Yes.
So and that's pretty much an impossible task.
It's hard.
And it's been done. So they did it all. Emily Blunt, Brolin, Benicio del Toro, all amazing performances here. Both character and talent-wise. This movie has story and character growth, which is important. A lot of movies trade off one for the other. And I don't know. I mean, it leaves you with feeling like, I still feel tension.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm just rambling because this movie like hits on all fronts. It's multifaceted and it just, I don't know. It's perfect. I really can't find flaws with it.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
All right. So I guess I'm the last one.
Yeah. You're going to give it a 10.
I'm probably going to give it a 7.
No, you're going to give it a 10.
Why would you give it a 7, David?
Yeah, really. Why?
Yeah, why does 7 sound so familiar?
You know
If
what?
it's not rewatchable and that's so important to you.
You're right. You know what? I think it balances out because there was no Yetis playing football.
Yeah, I think the other movie you gave 7 to was The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
That's the only one.
Only one.
I never give 7s.
Yeah, that's one of our lost episodes. You can maybe find it if you go to screenpunk.net.
Yeah,
But if you really want to hear David
You
give,
really don't. Those are the lost episodes. They're not good. I'm sorry. They're not good.
No, they're really.
but it is forever etched in stone that you did give The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon
I
Emperor
didn't-
a 7 out of 10.
I didn't know anything about movies back then. I don't know even how I got on this podcast. All right. But getting back into the movie we're covering here, Sicario. I gave it a 10. You're right, Reese. I gave it a 10.
Am I seriously the only one that didn't give it a 10?
You're right. This is our second
Dang.
highest movie. I don't even
thought
have
I rated
to look
it
at the
still
list.
really high.
You did.
You did. Like, that's.
And the thing is, no one can fault
Same
you for that.
director.
Yeah.
And I, similar to Irina, had trouble with this. I was thinking about 9.5 and up. And
Well, me too. I was thinking about 9.5 as well.
I think in the three of us were on the same page.
And then you're like, why am I thinking about 9.5? Like,
yeah, it's you have to really think about it.
For me, I was thinking of 10.0, but then I was like, well, personal preference has me like putting
Yeah.
fantasy and
Well, and I think that's a good
up a
segue
notch.
for me, Noah, because this is where I was really struggling because I was between like, if you really want to take my personal opinion into this is not my movie. This is not the content that I want to watch. When I pick out a movie, if I want to enjoy a rewatchable movie, something that makes me happy, this is not that movie. I would give this, if it comes to rewatchability, I would give this a 6 or a 5. I think this is a poor movie with that. I'm sorry, AJ and Reese. But when it comes to breaking down, how do you fault this movie? You cannot do it.
Yeah,
This is not a faultable movie. This is a perfect movie. It's whether or not I think it's rewatchable or not can't factor into that. I think that every aspect of this movie is enjoyable. It's something I think everyone should watch. I think it's one of those, I would put it in a top 10 list of need to watch movies.
Yeah.
And it's hard, like especially for me. Heavy stuff weighs more on me, I feel like, than anybody else in this group. I don't know about AJ, but it's hard for me to get through these kind of movies. And I felt, not empowered, but just like when I finished this, I felt like I went through a war.
yeah.
You know, there's something about it. And Denis Villeneuve, he's one of my favorite directors.
It is
Villain.
the
I don't know.
That's what it is.
Villeneuve.
Yeah.
Villeneuve? Oh, I'm sorry. I was so far off.
No, this movie, it is like a closeted epic. Like where it's like it seems like a movie that is small, but by the end of it, you're like, no, this was like an odyssey.
Yeah.
Like it's like, I don't know,
It's heavy.
Yeah,
I think part of the reason you say the word like there's not a fault with it, you can't fault it, is because you realize everything is very deliberate. You know, like when you come across a movie where you feel every scene, every moment, and all the gestures are deliberate, you're like, well, I can't honestly fault this because that's intended. You know, that you don't feel like it's in.
It's not by accident.
Yeah.
It's not like
So-
they accidentally made something good.
Right.
It was all intentional. And I think that as a director really shows how he's paying attention to every aspect. This is a Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings level where he is, I mean, maybe not that level. I don't think anyone touches that level.
no, it's a director who is completely in control
Of his work.
of his vision and knows how to execute it.
Right.
Well, it's
A big variable here is, or factor is consistency.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people can nail scenes right. Like I say Tarantino is kind of like this. But doing that throughout the entire movie
Right.
that we see on screen in every aspect of it, like even body language,
Yeah.
how Reggie and Kate have their arms crossed as a defensive position. Matt has his hands in his pocket, kind of rocking on his feet because he's nonchalant. Like everything about that tracks throughout the beginning of the movie, the end of the movie, along with their character growth, their arc, and that's what makes it real. It's not like, oh yeah, this scene is great, like how he does this, and this, but then the rest of the movie is just meh.
Yeah.
Like every single little part, the big parts are all consistent and fluid.
Yes. And so I agree completely. And I think one of the last things I want to say about this, and I've been trying to figure out where I wanted to insert this, and I guess no better place than my own review of this movie, is that I find that things in gray are more real than when you draw a line in the sand, black and white. This is right, this is wrong. This is not what that movie does.
No, not at all.
It is in gray, and that is what real life is.
And then when those true moments of good or bad shine through the gray, it seems more genuine.
Exactly. And you can see those in the characters. They replicate real life. And I mean, in gray, that is where moral ambiguity comes into play. This movie is moral ambiguity. I mean, there is no right or wrong. And I find perfection in that ambiguity.
I wouldn't go as far to say there's no right and wrong, and I don't think this movie says that, but I know what you're coming from. It's like they're not saying this party is bad, this party is good. It's like these are humans.
There's good and
these are
bad on
human
both
spirits.
sides. There's no good or bad side. There are good and bad people on both sides.
It's one of those things where it's like, is doing the morally right thing going to hurt this operation more than it is going to help? You
The
know,
greater
it's like
good
trying
kind of
to
thing.
find that.
A lot of movies, like they throw out the greater good, and it's like so tried, and it's a trope that's just overdone. Yet this movie is about that, but they never even say that.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they're doing the greater good. It doesn't matter what your personal perspective is. I mean, we all think we're trying to do the greater good.
Yeah. Kate is the one who is the grounding of it. She is actually grounded in good, like at the beginning of this. And when she is faced with this other side, that's when she starts to dabble with it a little bit.
She doesn't want to be in the gray. She wants to be in the black and white.
She's intrigued by the gray.
yeah.
That's the thing, but she never like vocally says it, but she wants to see how deep down into the onion she can get.
The fact that she went on that last mission shows that.
Yes. Well said, David.
Thank you.
All right. AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for us?
All right, group average is at 9.8.
All right.
And as we alluded to earlier,
Mission
this
accomplished
is
for me,
second
by the way.
place
Mission accomplished.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
So our perfect score of a Blade Runner 2049 is obviously number one here. Same director brings us our number two.
Man, Villeneuve,
Sicario.
he's got our number.
Number 1 and 2.
And then number 3 is Good, Bad, and Ugly, I believe. Let me double check.
I think you're right. I think that had a 9.7 or 8.
Yep, you're right.
Yep.
9.7.
All right. Right nestled there between the top 3, in the top 3.
It's been a while.
That's awesome, though. That really kind of validates my thoughts on this movie. One of my favorites. let's move on to critics. All right, guys, brace yourself. It's not good. I'm just kidding.
I was like, what?
Like, that's weird.
On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 92% with an 85% audience score. Metacritic, it has an 82, which on Metacritic, that is
Phenomenal.
deemed universal acclaim. So even though it's 82 out of 100, that is, for some reason, universal acclaim versus just generally positive reviews.
It's like a 99 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Sure. It kind of, in some ways, that kind of is. And an 8.1 from audiences. On IMDb, this movie has a 7.6, which is an audience-based score. That said, I think with audiences, there's people that like their happy ending. And I have a feeling, now I haven't done any digging, but that there are people who watch movies on a more superficial level, and they're like, I just want my happy ending.
I would argue most people do.
Yeah, and I could
David,
see
people do.
I could see a number of people scoring this movie low because it is kind of grim at times, and the ending is very, as you've said, David, gray. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Well, it makes me think of when I watch Inception. You know, when the top is spinning and it kind of moves and you don't know whether or not it's going to fall or not.
That's this movie the whole time?
Yeah. Well, I just remember I was like, I love that ambiguity. I love that you don't know. I love that you have to contemplate whether or not did it fall or did it not.
This is a very
Ridley
conversation
Scott, Blade Runner.
provoking.
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar. And I remember talking to my mom about that, and she was like, I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. And I was like, how?
Yeah.
She's like, I don't like that you don't know.
So
and a lot of people don't like not knowing.
What David is saying is that Moms got this movie down to a 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb.
I'm just saying, there are a lot of people out there who don't like having this straightforward answer.
No, those were your words verbatim, David.
Wait, all right, you're right. Let me go back to that. Moms gave this a 7.2.
Can you please cut this in a perfect way to make it sound like David just hates moms?
Sure. Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, 7 out of 10. Moms hate movies.
Give all the bad scores.
All right, box office. This movie released on October 2nd in 2015.
Interesting.
Against The Martian, that Matt Damon movie. Ridley
This came out
Scott
the
film.
same year?
Yep. And the second weekend of Hotel Transylvania 2.
Ugh.
Oh, gosh.
The movie is budgeted at $30 million. What do you guys think this one did worldwide? I'm going to start with...
Wait. You didn't say the budget yet, right?
I said $30 million.
Oh, dang it. I was going to say... I blanked. I didn't hear it. I am going to say I was very curious as to what the budget was going to be for this one specifically.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot going on.
Yeah, $30 million is about where I would put this movie. Like, it looks like... I think it looks actually above its budget. Mm-hmm. Like, I think this...
It does.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this movie looks like a Michael Mann movie, and Michael Mann's... He's very meticulous about, like, the sets and just authenticity.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like character or the actors alone, I feel like could be 30 million.
Yeah. But Michael Mann, his movies are a lot more expensive. But this, like, looks like that level of quality. If I had seen this movie without knowing its budget, I would guess something around 60 million. But yeah, 30 million. They pulled this off on a relatively low budget. It's still like kind of a mid-budget, but it is on the lower end. It's the lower end of mid-budget.
For Blockbuster?
Yeah. All right, let's start with AJ. What's your prediction for the worldwide box office take of Sicario?
That's tough because I had an idea, and then you dropped The Martian. Martian was huge.
It was. See, that's what I remember. I don't remember this movie dropping when it released. I remember The Martian.
So
that's a good indicator.
One caveat: this movie released limited 2 weeks before its official like wide release, and then it opened up a little more the second weekend, and then it had its full wide release against The Martian.
Why do people do this? Why do they do that?
That's with Prestige Pictures. It's to drum up buzz so that they can spend less on like marketing and other stuff, and it's more of a word of mouth thing.
Grassroots.
Yeah.
I feel like, in my experience, so this is just my microcosm or whatever, this movie came highly related to me, as I mentioned, but it was by a select few whose word I trusted, but I don't know how that translated well to general public until well after the fact. So especially with marketing for The Martian, I remember heavily, even with the delayed release timeline.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 75.
Ooh.
75 million.
So over double the budget. I think it still was well received.
It got a sequel, AJ.
All right, David.
Well, it's appropriate since I was just kind of whispering at AJ. I think it had to have at least tripled. I mean, it got 30, let's see, 30, 60, 90. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw on the far side. I'm going to say that word of mouth, that slow release, the buzz, it got up to 150. I'm going to say it quintupled.
All right, Irina.
85.
85. Noah.
I had similar thoughts as David here. A little less extreme. I think 120.
120. Irina.
What?
You are just about right on the money.
Dang.
85 million.
What?
Worldwide.
Whoa.
Yeah, technically $84,872,444.
That's 85 million.
Yeah, no, it's 85 million. Irina, that was spectacular.
Look at that.
Yeah, the movie did
I
80.
didn't look it up or anything.
It roughly tripled its budget, and I think with the critical reviews and the almost tripling of the budget, and the likelihood that this movie cost less on the marketing front and relied more on word of mouth, I don't think you would apply the triple the budget to this being equal to a success. I think this would have been more of, as AJ said, maybe a double, and it would be successful. So it did a little over double, not quite triple.
Basically triple.
Good reception from most moviegoers and critics, more importantly. So yeah, there you have it. That's kind of, it's a moderate success. I wouldn't say it's like a knockout. It's not like it didn't spawn. It wasn't like electrifying like John Wick was, where it just immediately like, okay, put the other one in. We're doing a trilogy.
Yeah.
Like
John
right
Wick
off
was
the
like
bat.
wildfire.
Yeah.
Which I looked into recently, and it looks like, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff going on with that franchise.
Yes. Yeah, they're expanding rapidly.
TV shows, secondary movies, spin-offs.
Oh, please don't overdo it.
Yeah, I don't want spin-offs.
They have the Continental.
Yeah, I don't want spin-offs. I could maybe do a TV show where you just go into like the Continental, just explore the assassins.
Don't want them to dilute the brand.
Yeah.
They're diluting
Crossover
it.
with
Sorry,
Atomic
AJ.
Blonde, call it at that.
Yeah, I actually really like John Wick where it's at 3, because I think it's like a really great trilogy.
It's like Avatar:
Yeah.
The Last Airbender. Stop it here, stop it now.
Yeah, but here I will let them. They've got 4 done. A 4 is coming out. I will watch that movie. I'm excited to see it, but I don't think it's necessary. Okay,
Agreed.
but does this lead us to a franchise? Well, of course it does. I think actually one of the reasons for this movie getting a sequel is because it's a Lionsgate film. This is me just personally speculating. Lionsgate, they do not have a lot of big franchises in their pen or in their stable of films.
Hunger Games.
Yeah, they've got Hunger Games. I think they own Summit, so they had the Insurgent. What's that? That Hunger Games
Divergent.
knockoff, Divergent.
Divergent, yeah.
I think Summit was also responsible for Twilight, so they kind of adjacently had Twilight as well. But other than that, Lionsgate has been this studio, or this studio that's just been kind of trying to wiggle its way into the big 4 or 5 that there are now, which is like WB. Fox is now part of Disney, so that's out. But Disney, Universal, Paramount, Lionsgate wants to be that. So anytime they get something that's like vaguely a success, it's like, okay, let's see what we can do with this. That's like why Expendables got 3 movies. Like Expendables was Lionsgate, I believe, as well. And
It was. I'm looking at it now.
for some reason there's 3 of those now, even though the first one wasn't like a massive success. It was still like, it wasn't well received, but it made over 100 million. So they're like, yep, might as well make a second
That's
one.
enough.
Apparently they did John Wick.
John Wick is Summit, so
John
yes.
Wick 2.
So there you go.
Yeah, it's under Lionsgate.
But yeah, I really do think that it's partially because it's Lionsgate, but it's also because the movie was well received and it made just enough to justify some sort of sequel, which is why we have Sicario 2, or Sicario, Day of the Soldado, or Soldado.
Dia del Soldado.
Yeah, directed by not Denis Villeneuve. So I think
It wasn't?
no.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I did see that one, so I'm surprised.
Yeah. Have you seen it recently?
No, I saw it when it first came out.
Well, now with new eyes, you can kind
gonna
of
change
you'll-
things.
I think you'll see things maybe differently.
I feel like I will, because that was before I was as into movies.
Now, I'm going to keep all my opinions to myself. I actually, I'm just not going to say. I am excited to talk about this sequel, though. I think it's different than your typical kind of throwaway sequel, but there's definitely discussions to be had around it.
Right.
So yeah, next week, Sicario, Day of the Soldado. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.
You're asking me how the watch is made. For now, just keep your eye on the time.